I want you to stay with me for a moment before your mind starts racing somewhere else. Not because I have something dramatic to say, but because what I am about to share is quiet, and quiet truths are usually the ones we ignore until it is too late. I have built companies, launched rockets, made decisions that affected thousands of people. And still there is one question that has followed me into every silent room I have ever sat in. When the noise disappears, when the achievements stop talking, when the world is not watching, what is the one thing I would choose in the woman I would call my wife? Not the list people expect, not the fantasy people imagine, just one quality. And before you think you already know the answer, let me tell you this. I did not understand it for most of my life. I had to lose things, misunderstand people, disappoint myself, and sit alone with my thoughts for years before this became clear. So listen slowly. Not like content, like a conversation meant only for you. If this moment feels like it found you instead of the other way around, you can gently tap like so this space stays alive. If you feel comfortable, subscribe so we can keep having these quiet conversations together. Tell me where you are watching from right now and what time it is where you are. If someone you love has ever questioned their worth, share this with them, softly. And if you are still here, it already tells me something about your heart. People think love is about intensity, fire, chemistry, grand gestures. I used to think that too. I confused intensity with meaning and urgency with depth. When you are young, intensity feels like truth because it is loud. It demands attention. It makes you feel chosen in a way that feels rare. But intensity burns fast. It consumes without asking whether there will be anything left afterward. I have lived inside intensity. I have mistaken it for destiny. And I have watched it collapse when life became inconvenient. When pressure arrived, when silence replaced excitement. That is when I learned that the loudest emotions are not the strongest ones. The strongest ones are steady. They stay when there is no applause. They remain when you are not at your best. There was a time in my life when I believed love was about being understood. I wanted someone who could see my mind, my ideas, the way I think in systems and possibilities. I wanted someone impressed by vision. But over time I realized something uncomfortable. Being understood is not the same as being held. Someone can understand you intellectually and still leave you emotionally alone. Someone can admire your mind and still disappear when your heart is tired. Have you ever felt that? Have you ever been seen but not stayed with? Have you ever been admired but not protected? As I grew older and life stripped away the unnecessary noise, I noticed a pattern in the moments that actually mattered. The moments that grounded me were not dramatic. They were quiet. They were small. Someone staying calm when I was overwhelmed. Someone not needing to fix me, change me, or compete with me. Someone who did not panic when things became uncertain. Someone who could sit with discomfort without turning it into chaos. That is when I started to understand the single quality that matters more than anything else. Emotional safety, not excitement, not beauty, not status, emotional safety. A woman who can be emotionally safe does not mean she is passive or weak. It means she has done her inner work. She knows who she is without needing to prove it. She does not weaponize emotions. She does not punish silence. She does not create storms to feel powerful. She allows space without interpreting it as abandonment. And in return, she offers presence without pressure. Have you ever been with someone who made you feel like you could finally exhale? Like you did not need to perform? Like you did not need to explain very pause in your voice? That feeling is rare, and once you experience it, nothing else compares. I have lived a life where decisions carry weight, where mistakes echo, where the margin for error is small. In that kind of life, the last thing your heart needs is instability at home. Love should not feel like another problem to solve. It should be the place where solutions are not required, where you can lay down the armor, where you can admit fear without it being used against you later. Emotional safety means I can say I am tired without being judged. It means I can be uncertain without being diminished. It means I can be quiet without being accused of pulling away. Many people think love is about passion, but passion without safety becomes anxiety. It becomes walking on eggshells. It becomes managing moods instead of building a life. I do not want a wife who needs constant reassurance because she does not trust herself. I do not want a wife who creates conflict to feel alive. I want a woman who understands that peace is not boring. Peace is earned. Peace is built. Peace is powerful. If you are listening to this and wondering whether you are too calm, too mature, too steady for love in this world, let me ask you something. When was the last time someone made you feel safe enough to be fully yourself? Not the version that entertains, not the version that pleases, the real one. And if that has been missing, is it possible that what you offer is exactly what someone like me would value most? As I look forward, not backward, I think about partnership differently. I do not need someone to complete me. I need someone who can walk beside me without losing herself. Someone who does not compete with my mission but understands it. Someone who knows when to speak and when to simply stay. Someone who can disagree without attacking. Someone who can love without control. Emotional safety is not dramatic, but it is everything. And here's the part people rarely talk about. Emotional safety is contagious. When one person offers it, the other becomes braver, kinder, more open. That is how real intimacy is built. Not through intensity, but through trust layered over time. Through consistency, through choosing each other when it is easy and when it is not. So tell me something. Have you ever been the calm in someone else's storm? Have you ever been the one who stayed steady while others created chaos? Have you ever wondered if that part of you would ever be truly valued? Because I am telling you now, that quality is not ordinary. It is rare, and it is the only one that lasts when everything else fades. And as I say this, I realize something else. Wanting emotional safety means being willing to offer it too. It means showing up without masks. It means choosing honesty over drama. It means loving in a way that feels quiet, deep, and enduring. And that kind of love does not rush. It recognizes itself slowly. There is more I want to say about this, about how emotional safety changes everything once you truly understand it, about why it matters even more later in life than it ever did before, about what it asks of both people, and about how it feels when you finally experience it after years of confusion. When you said yes, I felt that pause again, that quiet decision to stay a little longer. That matters more than you realize, because emotional safety always begins with choice. It is not dramatic, it is not loud, it is choosing to remain present when you could easily leave. And that is exactly where I want to continue. Emotional safety changes the way time feels inside a relationship. When it is missing, time feels urgent. Every silence feels like a threat. Every disagreement feels like the beginning of the end. You start measuring words, managing reactions, preparing defenses. Love turns into strategy. I lived there longer than I should have. I thought love was supposed to feel like pressure, like constantly proving something. But pressure is not intimacy. Pressure is fear wearing a disguise. When emotional safety is present, time slows down. Conversations breathe. Silence becomes neutral, even comforting. You do not rush to conclusions. You do not assume the worst. You trust the space between words. That kind of trust does not come from chemistry. It comes from emotional maturity. It comes from knowing yourself well enough that you do not need to control someone else to feel secure. I've noticed that emotionally safe women move differently through the world. They do not chase attention. They do not compete for validation. They do not confuse intensity with depth. They have a grounded way of listening that makes you feel heard without being interrogated. They can sit with difficult truths without turning them into personal attacks. And most importantly, they are not afraid of another person's inner world. They do not try to edit it, they respect it. Have you ever been in a conversation where you felt like you could say the wrong thing at any moment, where honesty felt risky, where vulnerability felt like a mistake? That is not love. That is emotional surveillance. And no matter how passionate it looks from the outside, it slowly iridesces the inside of a person. I know this because I have lived inside that erosion. I have felt myself becoming quieter, more guarded, more careful. Not because I was losing interest, but because I was losing safety. An emotionally safe partner does not demand constant access to your emotions. She does not need explanations for every internal shift. She understands that sometimes the mind needs solitude to recalibrate. She does not personalize your focus. She does not interpret your silence as rejection. She trusts that presence does not always require words. That level of trust is not accidental. It comes from a woman who has faced her own fears and no longer projects them outward. I want you to understand something important. Emotional safety does not mean avoiding conflict. It means handling conflict without cruelty. It means disagreements do not become character assassinations. It means frustration does not turn into punishment. It means love is not withdrawn as leverage. When a woman can stay kind even when she is hurt, that tells me more about her strength than any accomplishment ever could. There is a misconception that emotionally safe women are boring, that they lack spark, that they do not challenge you. The truth is the opposite. Emotional safety creates the space where real challenge can happen, where growth is encouraged instead of forced, where feedback is honest but not destructive, where two people can evolve without tearing each other down. That kind of partnership sharpens you. It does not drain you. As I have gotten older, I have become deeply aware of how rare this quality is. Many people want love, but few people want the responsibility of being safe for another human being. It requires restraint. It requires self-awareness. It requires seeing understanding over reaction. It requires pausing before responding. It requires asking yourself, will my words protect or wound? And that choice has to be made over and over again. Let me ask you something personal. When someone you care about is overwhelmed, do you try to fix them, or do you simply stay? When someone you love is quiet, do you feel the silence, or do you respect it? When emotions run high, do you escalate, or do you ground? Your answers to these questions reveal more about your capacity for love than anything else. I do not need a woman who agrees with me on everything. I need a woman who can disagree without making me feel unsafe, who can challenge my thinking without attacking my character, who can express her needs without ultimatums, who can hold boundaries without walls. Emotional safety is not submission. It is mutual respect lived consistently. There is also something deeply intimate about being emotionally safe. It creates a bond that goes beyond attraction. It creates a sense of home. And home is not a place. It is a feeling. It is knowing that no matter what happens outside, there is a space where you are not judged, rushed, or emotionally manipulated. A space where your nervous system can rest. I have come to believe that love later in life is not about fireworks. It is about warmth. It is about steadiness. It is about choosing peace without mistaking it for emptiness. And the woman who understands this does not need to announce it. You feel it when you are with her. You notice it in how your body relaxes and how your thoughts slow down and how you stop bracing for impact. If you are listening and recognizing yourself in this, I want you to know something quietly. This quality is not invisible. It may have been overlooked by people who were addicted to chaos, but it is deeply visible to someone who has outgrown it. Emotional safety becomes priceless once you understand its absence. And there is another layer to this that I have not ooched yet. Emotional safety does not just change relationships. It changes the way you love yourself. It shifts the standard of what you tolerate. It requires what you are willing to accept. Once you experience it, you cannot go back to confusion disguised as passion. There is more I need to share with you about this, about how emotional safety transforms intimacy, about why it becomes even more essential as time moves forward, about the quiet ways it shows up when love is real, and about how it feels when two people finally recognize it in each other. When people talk about love, they often talk about how it begins, the spark, the moment, the instant recognition. But what matters far more, especially later in life, is how love survives. How it behaves when novelty fades, how it responds when life becomes heavy, repetitive, uncertain. Emotional safety is not something you notice on the first day. You notice it on the days when nothing special happens, when the world feels ordinary, when there is no performance to give. That is when its presence or absence becomes unmistakable. I used to believe love was about momentum, about moving forward, building, expanding. And while that is true in some ways, I learned that love without emotional safety eventually turns momentum into exhaustion. You start carrying weight that is not yours. You start managing reactions instead of sharing experiences. You start editing yourself to preserve peace instead of being yourself to create it. And slowly, without realizing it, you drift away from who you are. Emotional safety is what allows a man to remain himself inside a relationship. Not the curated version, not the impressive version, the human one, the one who has doubts, the one who sometimes needs quiet instead of answers, the one who can admit he does not know what comes next without fearing judgment. When that safety is missing, even love starts to feel lonely. I have spent years thinking about why some relationships feel draining even when there is affection and why others feel nourishing even without constant excitement. The difference is not effort, it is environment. Emotional safety creates an environment where effort is not forced, where care flows naturally, where showing up does not require self-betrayal. There is a kind of woman who understands this instinctively. She does not crowd emotional space. She does not demand explanations for every internal process. She trusts that closeness does not require constant access. She understands that love is not possession. It is presence without pressure. And that understanding comes from experience, from maturity from having lived enough life to know that control never creates connection. Have you ever noticed how your body reacts around certain people? How your shoulders tense, how your breathing changes, how your thoughts accelerate? Those are not random responses, they are signals. Your nervous system knows when it is safe long before your mind does. Emotional safety feels like a slowing down inside you, like a quiet permission to be human. I am drawn to women who create that feeling without trying. Women who do not confuse drama with depth. Women who have nothing to prove and no need to compete. Women who have learned that love is not about winning arguments, but about protecting the bond even when emotions are high. That kind of wisdom does not come from theory. It comes from having been hurt, having reflected, and having chosen growth over bitterness. There is something profoundly intimate about being with someone who does not use your vulnerabilities against you, who remembers what matters to you and treats it carefully, who understands that trust is not built through promises but through consistency. Emotional safety is built in moments so small they are easy to overlook. A gentle tone instead of a sharp one, a pause instead of a reaction, a question instead of an accusation. I have learned that the woman I would choose as my wife would be someone who knows how to regulate her emotions without expecting me to regulate them for her. Someone who does not outsource her sense of stability. Someone who can be upset without becoming destructive. Someone who can express needs without ultimatums. Someone who can sit with discomfort without turning it into chaos. That level of emotional intelligence is deeply attractive to me, not because it is rare, but because it is earned. It tells me she has taken responsibility for her inner world. It tells me she will not make me the battleground for unresolved wounds. It tells me she understands that love is not about being saved, but about choosing to walk together. As a man who has spent much of his life under pressure, I know how precious peace is. Not silence, but peace. The kind that allows creativity to flourish. The kind that makes you want to share instead of withdraw. The kind that turns partnership into a refuge instead of a responsibility. Emotional safety creates that peace. I also know that emotionally safe women often go unnoticed in a culture addicted to intensity. They are mistaken for being too calm, too steady, too predictable. But calm is not empty. Calm is spacious. Calm is where real connection grows. Calm is where intimacy deepens instead of burning out. And once you have lived through chaos, calm becomes the most beautiful thing in the world. Let me ask you something gently. When you love someone, do you feel the urge to fix them, or do you trust their process? When someone you care about pulls inward, do you panic or do you give space? When emotions rise, do you escalate or do you encore? These are not small questions. They define the emotional climate you bring into a relationship. I am not interested in perfection. I am interested in awareness. A woman who knows her triggers and takes responsibility for them. A woman who can apologize without collapsing into shame. A woman who can listen without preparing a defense. A woman who understands that being emotionally safe does not mean never hurting someone, but caring deeply about repair when you do. There's also a quiet confidence in emotionally safe women that I find compelling. They do not need constant reassurance. They do not test love. They do not create distance to feel chased. They trust connection enough to let it breathe. That trust creates a depth that no amount of passion can replace. I have come to see love not as something you fall into, but something you maintain through conscious choices. Emotional safety is a choice made daily. It is choosing kindness over being right. It is choosing curiosity over assumption. It is choosing patience over control. These choices are not glamorous, but they are transformative. As time goes on, I am less interested in who someone appears to be and more interested in how they make others feel over time. Emotional safety leaves a residue of calm. You carry it with you even when the person is not there. It shows up in how you speak, how you listen, how you respond to stress. That is the kind of influence that lasts. If you are listening to this and recognizing yourself, I want you to understand something important. This quality you carry is not invisible to the right person. It may not attract chaos, but it attracts depth. It attracts someone who is ready to build instead of consume. Someone who values steadiness over spectacle. Someone who understands that love later in life is not about proving anything. It is about preserving what matters. There is another dimension to emotional safety that most people do not consider. It creates freedom. When you feel safe, you become more honest, more expressive, more open. You take emotional risks because you trust the container. and those risks deepen intimacy in ways that excitement alone never could. I have experienced relationships where I felt energized but unsafe, and others where I felt safe but not fully seen. The rare ones are where both exist, where emotional safety creates the foundation for being fully known. That is the kind of partnership I am open to now. One where love feels like a place you return to, not a performance you maintain. As I sit with these thoughts, I realize how much my understanding of love has changed. What once seemed unexiting now feels essential. What once felt necessary now feels exhausting. Emotional safety has become the lens through which I see everything else. Without it, nothing lasts. With it, everything deepens. There is still more I want to explore with you about how emotional safety transforms intimacy in ways that are rarely discussed, about how it reshapes desire, closeness, and trust over time, about how two people learn to recognize it in each other without words, and about the moment you realize you no longer want anything else. There's a moment in life when desire changes its language. It stops shouting and starts whispering. You no longer ask who excites you the most. You ask who calms your nervous system, who makes hard days softer instead of heavier, who listens without waiting to speak. Emotional safety shows up strongest when things go wrong, not when everything is easy. I imagine sitting across from the woman I would choose, not needing to impress her, not needing to explain myself, just being and feeling no fear that honesty will cost me connection. That is intimacy at its deepest level, not passion that flares and fades, but closeness that survives silence, stress, and time. A woman who offers that kind of safety changes how a man loves. He becomes gentler, more open, more willing to stay because he is not protecting himself anymore. He is building with someone who understands that love is not pressure, it is permission. And when two people finally meet at that level, something irreversible happens. You stop searching, you stop questioning, you recognize home. There is a quiet certainty that arrives when love is right. Not excitement that keeps you awake, but peace that lets you rest. You stop wondering where you stand. You stop rehearsing conversations in your head. You stop bracing for emotional impact. Love becomes something you live inside, not something you chase. If I ever speak the word wife again, it will not be because I found perfection. It will be because I found safety. A woman who knows how to be gentle without being fragile, strong without being harsh, present without being consuming. Someone who understands that love is not about taking, but about holding space for another human being to exist fully. And if you are listening and this resonates, maybe it is because you already ride this quality. Maybe you have always been the calm, the steady one, the place others rested without realizing why. That kind of love does not rush, it waits,